Hello indie game fans, September did not let up with the great releases, since we had week after week after week of awesome games, with the best picks beginning with Realm of Ink, a gorgeous action roguelite that might as well be Chinese mythology Hades, having a very pretty calligraphy or ink-inspired art style, but with vibrant splashes of colour as well. The action in this feels great, and has fun upgrades and especially bosses to battle, being very promising in early access, and I cannot wait to see where they go with this. An all-action title, which, admittedly, is a ton to take in, is Mirage Feathers, an on-rails shooter with a pseudo 3D art style in which you are soaring through the skies and taking out approaching enemies. This has been compared to titles like Star Fox, but much more anime and having great pixel art, so if you're in the mood for an action title, do check this out. This video is brought to you by Creatures of War, a side-scrolling action platformer with survival horror elements, where you come face to face with primal terrors, including dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures. Your mission? Find and extract the missing members of Delta Squad, who were sent to investigate the island, but their helicopter went missing with fears that it was shot down. As you explore the diverse biomes of the island, you will encounter ferocious creatures, capturing the feel of what it would actually be like coming face to face with a dinosaur. While you do have guns and weapons, it will still be a desperate struggle for survival, so you need to be cautious and not just go in guns blazing. There are survival horror elements of scavenging for limited ammo and weapons and searching for clues in abandoned buildings while trying not to get killed. I have a soft spot for dinosaur-themed games, so of course this got my attention, with there currently being a demo available on Steam, so go play that and wishlist the game via the link in the description below. It's a great time to be a Heroes of Might and Magic fan, since we have indie developers making all sorts of spiritual successors, such as the sci-fi Silence of the Siren. Fans of the long-running series will be familiar with this, since it involves overworld exploration, turn-based combat on a hex grid, and castle upgrading, with that familiar weekly system after which you can recruit new units from your creature dwellings to increase your army strength, and is perhaps the most direct tribute to Heroes of Might and Magic 3 that I have come across. An all-action first-person shooter from one of the most interesting developers in the space is I Am Your Beast, in which you play as a special agent type who is fed up from being called in for one last job too many times, now taking things into his own hands to fight the agency that he was once a part of. The action in this is fast-paced and intense, and critically does not allow you to reload, so you have to pick up weapons from defeated enemies, but can also do things like throw the entire pistol at enemies to knock them out, being so snappy and so quick, and is a must-play. If you love tactical strategic roguelites without going straight into grid-based tactics titles, I would recommend Necroking, in which you play as the titular character, raising an army of undead minions to go forth and conquer human settlements, with the occasional spider nest and other types of monsters to deal with. The overworld exploration is relatively simple, but you need to watch your resources, FTL style, but where this game shines is in the combat. There are 4 play areas on the battlefield, with units having different attack and movement stats in relation to their spacing, advancing forward to fight the enemy, with the same being done to you, with the relatively minimalist pixel art being very well done. Here's a title which kind of came out of nowhere if you were not paying attention, in which Cat God Ranch is a symbol building score-based roguelite similar to Luck Be a Landlord, but where you are placing animals on your ranch to generate enough tribute for the cat god for the week, or else you risk facing its wrath. It is so vibrant and cute with the animal designs, and thus have plenty of strategy and combos to discover from the different animals that you can place down and their position relative to each other. and is, in some ways, Balatro-like as well, since it is all about score, marking an interesting uptrend in this style of game. Another title with inspiration from other games is NEODUEL Backpack Monsters, one that mashes together backpack battles with Pokemon, in which you are recruiting a party of monsters and placing them in your backpack to do battle with your opponent. The position of these creatures relative to the other creatures and items in your backpack will determine their effectiveness, where this is an asymmetric PvP title where every opposing build that you face was actually created by a player at some point in time, with the evolving monsters twist being a nice change of pace. It's a great time to be a survival horror fan, since there have been great games coming out of both bigger studios as well as indie developers, the latest of which is Hollowbody, one that takes inspiration from Silent Hill but is set in an abandoned British city that has been walled off from the rest of the country, as well as a tech noir vibe where our heroine goes in search of a partner who went missing 12 days ago. I'm not the biggest survival horror person, but even I can tell that the world building and atmosphere is excellently done here, mixing in the survival horror item finding puzzles with tense combat against unnatural monstrosities, with its share of scares as well. It is relatively short, clocking in at about 5 hours, but then again, horror games are actually not that long anyway, and I think that this is a good duration and is perfect for this time of year. A hidden gem that you might have missed is Dungeon Tycoon, which, as the title proposes, is a tycoon game in which you're building dungeons. Wow, Captain Obvious, I know. But this is not your typical dungeon keeper kind of dungeon, since you are running a business and want to keep it going. That means that you cannot exactly kill all the heroes that come in the front door, but rather have to just leave enough of them alive so that they won't leave a bad rating and will come back, being a dungeon theme park tycoon game instead, so it's kind of weird thematically, but the core management and building elements are fun and worth picking up.
Welcome to the land of Mojo.
One of the games that I was very much looking forward to is the Plucky Squire, an action-adventure title with a storybook presentation but with a twist, since the hero can pop out of the book into 3D, exploring a kid's room there, with the core gimmick being excellently done here. It's a beautiful looking game, but unfortunately isn't all that challenging, so it can get a bit boring if you have been around video games, but as something that is all art style, this is certainly a beauty. Speaking of pretty games, a pixel art title of interest is Flowstone Saga, a Tetris-based JRPG of all things which you don't see every day as compared to its Match 3 counterparts. Our heroes are exploring a chain of islands, building out and upgrading her home village while fighting off threats like pirates or the Empire. The pixel art is on point and looks absolutely gorgeous, where I want to talk more about the combat system. Yes, for the most part, you are playing Tetris, but there are elements on the board like link crystals that you need to consider if you want to deal maximum damage, and if the real time pressure is too much for you, there is the option to switch on hold mode that stops the blocks from falling, and the enemy action bar only ticks up when you lock in a piece, providing a good compromise. But if you have even the slightest liking for Tetris, the normal way is the way to go and is somewhat of a hidden gem. Another ambitious title that has done well but could use more players is Ale Tale Tavern, a first-person simulation title that has you running a tavern in a medieval fantasy world, placing furniture, cooking food, and serving your customers. So far, so standard, similar to a bunch of other first-person simulation titles. However, this is more ambitious since there is a whole open-world RPG attached to this, where you can hunt down monsters, fish, take on quests, explore caves, and more, with the presentation of this kind of reminding me of MMOs like WoW, and interestingly, is not an early access title, so you have the full experience here, and also has co-op support, so grab a couple of friends and jump in. A neat-looking pixel art defense roguelite title is Drill Core, combining Domekeeper with a management sim, where it is not just limited to your player avatar going down to dig and excavate resources, but where you have a whole team of miners to help. Resources can then be used to construct new buildings and upgrades, which will allow you to dig even further to get better resources, but watch out for swarms of alien bugs that will come to destroy your base, hence the need for turrets. The presentation is fantastic, having a comedic tone to all the propaganda-style videos that want you to join the Drill Core, with the game's biggest weakness, surprisingly, being that play sessions are long and you cannot save in between, so you need to allocate a significant chunk of time, think 1 to 2 hours per session, in order for this to make sense, but it is still in early access, so let's see how the developers tweak the game.
This is Gold Rock Radio.
First-person simulation titles are also not usually my thing, since there have been so many driving or trucking sims, for example, and yet Star Trucker got my attention, since they did do something different, allowing you to drive a big rig in space, which makes it unique enough. You are still hauling cargo from one port to the next, having to carefully drive and deliver the goods without damaging them, and then using the rewards for fuel and upgrades to your truck, where coasting the intergalactic highways and experiencing the beauty and dangers of space is definitely worth your time. One of the more interesting releases of the month is Lorn's Lure, a first-person platformer for lack of a better term, in which you play as an android making its way through a vast structure. It has a climb anything mechanic, so you can use your two picks to effortlessly move anywhere, so you might think that there would be no challenge, but then you get to pencil-thin steel beams and support structures that you need to walk along, next to steep, angled wall faces that you can slide off to use as the launching pad for your next jump to move forward. It is moody and very atmospheric, with an interesting central mystery as well, and is one of the more unique releases of the year. Just when you thought indie puzzle platformers have been overdone to the point of death of the genre, along comes a title like Kato Buttered Cat, in which you control both Toast and Cat independently, which, when together, allows the creature to infinitely jump and fly up in the air. As with most great puzzle platformers, this starts off relatively simple, but then gets deviously challenging, having a surprising number of mini-games as variety, and does hide plenty of secrets as well. But I think that the meta layer to puzzle games are a must in today's gaming landscape. Here's a very interesting release in the Ninth Dawn remake, which is a complete overhaul of a game from 2012, in which developer Valorware have been steadily on the grind since then, with Ninth Dawn 2 and 3 being well received, so they have taken lessons from those and applied it to the original. This is an open-world action-adventure RPG with a ton of variety, including monster taming, crafting, a deck-building card game within the game, a Vampire Survivors-style fishing minigame and more, also adding first-person mode for some reason, and is interesting to see. It seems like if you are into this, you can easily get dozens of hours of gameplay out of it due to the variety, and it's great to see a game like this succeed. A seemingly tiny game that is an absolute juggernaut is Tiny Glade, an interactive toy without objectives that allows you to create tiny medieval dioramas, which was very high up on the list of most anticipated games on Steam, and that has translated into sales, easily crossing 500,000 copies sold, and is a success. There have been several impressive builds going around, such as one of Rivendell from Lord of the Rings, and apparently there's much more to this game than meets the eye under the hood, since it is a custom engine that allows for ray tracing and such for the game to look this good even on lower spec machines, and truly is a standout title.
Outthink, outplay, out now.
We also had the 1.0 release of Mechabellum, a sci-fi auto-battler title that looks visually stunning, in which you are assembling an army of mechanical units, placing them on the battlefield in formation, and hitting the Go button to see what happens. Of course, you can attempt to affect the battle by strategically timing your abilities, but come on, giant armies of tanks, mechs, ships, and more clashing in glorious destruction is the appeal and has delivered on what they went for. Speaking of tactical titles, another 1.0 release of interest is Shogun Showdown, a turn-based roguelite with a Japanese theme in which you are taking on multiple enemies but can move and reposition so that they hit each other in a manner similar to Into the Breach. The pixel art is effective and looks good, with the deck building aspect to your attacks and abilities being strategic, and has an unlock system for new characters, skills, and more when you complete or fail a run. It's a lot of 1.0 releases, I know, but early access, when done right, can result in excellent titles since the developers have the time, feedback, and most importantly, funding to keep going to make the best possible product that they can, with the Vampire Survivors style roguelite Halls of Torment being of interest. While similar for the most part, the low-res, almost Diablo 1 looking presentation to the game is neat and has quests and progression based on in-game achievements like dealing X amount of damage with a particular weapon or to hit some milestone of movement speed, rather than simply grinding out the game. And, no shade here, has been my go-to podcast game for a little while, with a large number of playable characters and unlocks for you to slowly chip away. Now this next title is something special since Echo Point Nova is a single-player open-world first-person shooter, although it does have co-op support, mixing fluid movement and traversal in addition to fantastic gunplay. You are exploring floating land masses in the sky, but do have a variety of kicks, slides, a hoverboard, and grapples to make your way across, where it feels pretty good to be flying all over the place, only to launch yourself into enemies and absolutely annihilate them with your weapons. There is a main quest with gigantic colossi to battle, but you can also wander off and explore any island that you can see, with the collection of agility orbs being key in allowing you to go even faster, so if speed is your thing, this is one to get. A gorgeous action roguelite that seems like a no-brainer from day one is Raven's Watch, coming to us from the developer of Curse of the Dead Gods, where following the success of that game, they just made another one of these but with a different theme, this time drawing upon classic folktales and legends. You do have different playable characters, which provides variety, but does have a similar art style to their previous game, which I'm not complaining about since it looks awesome and it is smart to use a style that the artists are familiar with. And with over 200 talents and 50 magical items, has plenty of permutations to experiment with to get that overpowered build that roguelites are best known for. This is perhaps a not-so-indie title since Coffee Stain Studios is under the Embracer Group banner, but what a journey it has been from Sanctum to Goat Simulator and now Satisfactory, a mega hit of a game that has easily outsold all the games on this list since its 1.0 launch early in the month, adding a whopping 12,000 Steam reviews to an impressive total of 161,000 as of recording, which easily translates to millions of copies sold. First-person Factorial is much more than that, since this is perhaps the most extensive factory builder on the market right now, and I just checked, has indeed surpassed Factorial in terms of Steam reviews, meaning that it is probably the biggest one of these at the moment. If you love your conveyor belts, this is the title for you, and if you're curious about the genre, I think that I would recommend this title. Okay, on paper, this is not the flashiest or most successful release of last month, but yet UFO 50 is still my favourite release, being a game compilation of 50 titles, yes, 50, made by a fictional company in the 1980s and 1990s for a fictional gaming console. While I don't have a particularly strong nostalgia for the NES and even SNES, having come to those games later, there's just something about the range of titles here and the visual style that evokes something in me. I believe this is from just 6 developers, where the game was announced in 2017, so that's at least 8 years making this game, if not more, due to pre-production. There's truly something for everyone, and if you love indie games, I would urge you to pick it up since it works out to just 50 cents per game, and these are not mini-games but full-sized titles in themselves. For completionists, you can cherry a game by completing it with certain requirements met, but for the rest of us, you might just want to sample and play those games which appeal to you. But what an accomplishment this is, and goes to show how awesome indie developers are. Watch this video for more of the best games of the year.